listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Super Bowl preview for Monday, January 20th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, let's go to the other side of the counter for the big game. Brian Blessing in Las Vegas, and we're playing a game of Where's Waldo with Bruce. He hopped on a plane, but he's joining us today. Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet as we're looking at San Francisco, Kansas City. The consensus is Kansas City's a 1-point favorite. 53.5 is the total for the Super Bowl in Miami. Bruce, favorite and the over, and the home teams readily got the job done on a Sunday. The Tennessee, I thought, had a much better chance to win that game. I thought they, I don't know if panic is the move, but only down 10. Once they became one-dimensional, which I thought was a big mistake, they abandoned Henry a little bit, and that one eventually got away from them. And San Francisco just put the Sasquatch foot on Green Bay.
Yeah, and, that Green Bay-San Francisco game, Brian, looked a lot like the Atlanta-Green Bay NFC title game 3 years ago. The Packers were just kind of knocked out early and a little belated run late, but it was way too late for Green Bay to do anything. Yeah, I agree with you with Tennessee. I thought they kind of got away from stuff, but that was, I give Kansas City some credit. They slowed down Henry, and they sort of made Tannehill become more important than he should have been for Tennessee, and they started to force some things in the second half. That should have been a closer game there. They didn't. Penalties at bad times hurt Tennessee as well. But, give Kansas City some credit. Did slow down Henry better than Baltimore or New England or anybody else the last month and a half. So maybe this Kansas City defense has improved enough where it gives the Chiefs fighting chance here. And this is, we've only had one Super Bowl, I think, end right at Pick'em, and that was that first Bengals 49ers Super Bowl. So we may have another one coming up in 2 weeks.
Is it this simple, Bruce? And maybe not, but, you got two teams playing really, really good football. San Francisco dominant in their two home playoff games. There's just one aspect of the game I just find it very hard to get away from, and that is on a weekly basis, Patrick Mahomes leads Kansas City in rushing, and that's scary. And, Mostert, he looked like Jim Brown yesterday. But San Francisco, even if Coleman doesn't come back, you've got Mostert, you've got Breida. In Kansas City, they didn't even dress McCoy. The Williams kid was okay, but they only had 112 yards rushing. That is just an area and an aspect of the game. In a one-off, in a one-game scenario, sure, anything can happen. But at this time of year, that, to me, it just looks like an awesome difference maker to me.
It does to me too, and some of the running, even yesterday, that one, the touchdown scramble before halftime, which was really the play of the game. That was just sort of a fluky pinball sort of a play, and you can have one or two runs in a game that sort of distort the rushing stats, but it doesn't mean you're running the ball well. And they're not running the ball that well, and they're not even trying much. And I from this stage, we've got another 2 weeks to think about this, but. San Francisco, it is. I mean, the ground game is what is the end. That's the engine room for the 49ers. But unlike Tennessee, I think Jimmy G can go to the air and move the 49ers that way if needed. Sort of like that game at New Orleans where, all of a sudden Kittle became the big guy. Now you've got Debo becoming more of a threat. You've got Sanders. You've got different guys out of the backfield who can catch. I mean, they kept running yesterday against Green Bay because that's what was working. But I think San Francisco has the ability to do things more in the air. By the way, I think it's interesting the way they're using Debo now on these reverses. Old timers will remember King Stram did a lot of that in that Super Bowl, and it was Frank Pitts, actually, not as much Otis, but Frank Pitts is the guy who used several times on reverses to keep the Vikings off balance 50 years ago. And I think that's something, an extra wrinkle in this running game here. We talk about Mostert and the other guys, but when they can sneak Debo in there, he had a couple of nice runs on those end arounds, which really keep defenses off balance.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. To make a case, obviously they got a shot, but for Kansas City, I would go to their versatility. In their first game, I played Kelsey over 73 receiving yards, and it was ridiculous. I mean, they had no answers for him. So you're sitting there going, Vrabel comes from the Belichick tree. They've got to stop Kelsey at all costs. They did. But that was the thing. He said, if they spend the week saying we got to take Kelsey away, the big plays will be there for Kansas City, and certainly over the top, Hill and Watkins, those big plays hit. So the good news and the best case I guess I would make for Kansas City, yeah, the running game really concerns me, but it's just the sheer way they can spread weapons out. Yeah,
and they can strike quick, and the thought will be that there's a feeling out there that San Francisco has problems with running quarterbacks, and again, it goes back. This sort of stats I think could be a little bit misleading. Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson had some runs against them, but you just watch the 49ers here and the speed with which they have up front defensively, they're going to bother Mahomes here. And that's one thing. I don't think Tennessee did enough. Mahomes just had way too much time on too many plays yesterday. And I can't see him having a lot of time back there. Now, he might be able to break the pocket and do something, but when he does that, generally, then that takes Tyreek Hill and Watkins and these guys out of the equation. I just don't see him having a lot of time back there. That's not to say he's not going to score once or twice a week. But listen, the 49ers defensive front, this is one of the fastest front sevens I've ever seen. And I dare say most of those guys can outrun Mahomes. So I think, they're going to have stuff happening quick. They're not going to be able to have plays take as long to develop as the game against the Titans. I don't recall anybody this year against San Francisco, against this defense, having a lot of time to sit back there and just wait and wait and wait and wait. I just don't think that's going to be the case in the Super Bowl.
And, another case for Kansas City, and maybe we should not just gloss over this. Mostert had 220 yards rushing. It was, give the kid full marks, but so many of those plays, he was at the point of attack through holes untouched. So, full marks to the offensive line and the job they did. But maybe we shouldn't sleep on the fact, I do think Tennessee pushed the panic button and got away from it too soon. Nonetheless, they held Henry to 69 yards.
They did, and this defense has improved from last year. And I know I still think some of the numbers down the stretch were a bit misleading, but they've done enough here, and they slowed. It was when they kind of slowed Henry down, too, at a point of the game when I think Tennessee just wanted to ride him there, maybe when it had the lead. That 17-7, that I think quickly turned to 17-14, so then they never got the ball back up 10 when they might have started to lean on him more. But in the third quarter there, when they had a chance to maybe stay in the game and do some things, Kansas City came up big in those spots, and it's a handful of plays in a game, really, that are all you need. It's when you do it, and they came up big on a few plays there to slow Henry down, and then Tannehill wasn't able to capitalize on it. But therein, I think, is the difference between these teams, between the Titans and the Niners. I think Garoppolo and the San Francisco aerial game are more likely to make something happen if they need to than Tennessee. But give Kansas City's defense credit, because nobody had slowed Henry down even, and they slowed him down enough to change the optics and the dynamics of the Tennessee offense in the AFC title game.
Well, listen, Mahomes, if you're right there, you say big edge, most important position on the field. Mahomes over Garoppolo, I don't think there's any question who anybody'd be taking. But if I just went keep it simple, stupid, a couple of weeks away from it, Bruce, this game really, I believe, is offense versus defense. And if defense wins championships, I got to give the edge to San Francisco.
Yeah, I do as well. And but we got to talk this over at the Gold Sheet and see what we're thinking about. That's my first. my first blush in the game is like you, but I actually think the matchup too will be the other way. What Garoppolo is going to be able to do and throw, and I think he can. I think that's my party line in the game right now. Garoppolo can go upstairs if he needs to, and I don't know that Tannehill could do that yesterday. And if they'll lean on Mostert and Breida probably, and I don't think Coleman's going to be available, that could be good enough. But if they need to, they got other guys, they got other weapons here, and Kittle could end up being a much bigger weapon than people realize in this game. So I'd keep that in mind too.
And again, when we get to this game, it's such a unique animal. The lengthy halftime, we're seeing a total of 53.5. I mentioned to Jack earlier in our odds-making segment, at that time of the evening, almost on a daily basis, and we're 2 weeks away from it, and you think, oh, Miami, it's going to be gorgeous. Almost daily, there's the monsoon 15-minute pop-up shower, and then we got to wait and see if actually, if it's going to be a nice night. But even if it's a nice night, there's still the possibility that just prior to kickoff, there's a ridiculous rainstorm. It happens almost every day. Just one other little goofball Rubik's Cube to try to put together.
I know. Well, I'm actually in Florida right now, so it'll probably rain on me later today. But remember, the one Super Bowl that kind of rained throughout was that Colts Bears, yeah, and it was in Miami. So keep that in mind too.
Yep. Okay. So it's our first kick at it with Bruce Marshall. We'll start diving into props and position players and all the other ways that we can attack this game. On paper, terrific game. KC a 1-point favorite. Total on the game is 53.5.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.